Hi, everyone. My name is Kendra Mosley. Welcome to today's Live Thursday. I'm here with two special guests, Vashti Kelly from AFOP, sorry, this side, and Juley Fulcher from Public Citizen. We're very happy that they could join us for this special conversation about heat stress. This week is our heat stress prevention training marathon that's taking place on our AFOP health page. So that's why we wanted to use this opportunity to highlight the challenge of staying safe from heat in the fields. This is the Children in the Fields campaign page, which usually we highlight children in the fields. So this is relevant for kids and also adults. So share it widely if you're watching. Make sure that you like and share so that as many people hear this message as possible. Stress is kind of a no-brainer, but actually we need to have this training more and more visible so that people take it seriously. I want to start out with my reminder that our contest is going on. The Children in the Fields Migrant and Seasonal Farmworker Kids Art and Essay Contest is got 2 weeks left. We extended the deadline, otherwise it would have ended yesterday. So 2 more weeks to send in those entries of art or essay if you or anyone that you know is a child of farm workers between 10 and 18 years old, you are eligible to apply. And we have many prizes in multiple categories, so it's really worth it to send anything in. Make sure you use that 2020 application, not previous years, because it's a new address that you'll be sending that entry to. It's a post office box. So yeah, the contest, I also want to remind everyone that this Live Thursday is weekly. So if you log on to Facebook and come to Children in the Fields page at 12:30, we're always here, except for, a few holidays here and there. So thank you to everyone who joins us every week. We're always happy to see you. Welcome to Gloria from Plainview, Texas. We're happy that you're on. And if you put your name and your location in the chat, I'll be sure to give you a shout out. We always love to see those comments. So I think that's all that I had to say as introduction. I wanted to also introduce our guests. So first of all, we have Vashti Kelly. She is our Health and Safety Program Manager, and she does the very essential work of training our trainers. So train-the-trainer sessions when our partners first start the program year so that they are then able to go out in the fields and educate farm workers on the dangers of pesticides and heat exposure. Vashti has been with AFOP for 10 years. So we're happy to have Vashti on. And you all might recognize Vashti. She actually used to work with Children in the Fields campaign too. So yeah, we love Vashti. And we also have Juley. Dr. Juley Fulcher is from Public Citizen. She has spent the past 20 years working in public policy in Washington, D.C. with a focus on social justice issues. She's a nationally recognized expert on women's rights and violence against women. So welcome, Juley. We're really happy that you could join us.
Thank you.
So today's discussion is heat stress in the fields. It's really hot out there. I don't know where all y'all are from. I guess I can see now. Oh, we have Victor from Puerto Rico. Welcome, Victor. We have Rachel from Texas. Welcome, Rachel. And we have Dee from Hawaii. This is awesome. I love this. So all very hot places. And so you all can chime in and let us know what the temperature is right now where you are, because it's July 16th. And right now we have a lot of heat waves going across the U.S. I looked at a temperature map a few days ago, and Texas was bright red. I don't know how it is right now, but I know at least DC is pretty hot. That's where Vashti and Juley and I are all at. So we do this heat stress prevention training marathon with our partners all across the country. Vashti, I can tell you more about it. And it's of a special importance right now because of COVID-19. Everyone's wearing the face masks, and I'm not sure how much data there is out there about like the simple face coverings that we usually see for the coronavirus these days, but it does increase one's risk for contracting a heat-related illness. In fact, I don't know if face masks factored into the most recent death that we heard about, but there was a young man who died in the fields in Indiana, I think just last week. His name was Jorge, and he was 26 years old. And he was a young man, and so a lot of people don't take that seriously. You know, if you're young and fit, you think you can survive anything. But he passed when corn, and he passed away from heat stroke. So that's my introduction. I want to start out with some questions. We have some prepared for Vashti and for Juley. But first, I want to also recognize a few others who came on. Aide from Monticello, Minnesota, welcome. And Lupe from South Florida, 90 degrees, welcome. Oh, and Aide said it's 77 in Minneapolis, so that sounds a little better. Gloria from Plainview, Texas says it's 88 degrees. And Vashti, do you know what the temperature is here?
When I left this morning, it was 90 degrees. The feel like with the humidity, of course, makes it feel like 95. I know tomorrow they said we're supposed to feel like we're in the hundreds. So, yay! Summer is here.
Yes, it is. Okay, so we'll get right into the questions. And I'm going to start with Vashti and ask her about our National Farmworker Training Program. What trainings are provided with this program? How many trainers do we have, and how many states is it run in?
Okay, so our National Farmworker Training Program, or NFTP, is intended for our member organizations to be able to have their staff get trained by me. And those trainers go out and they train farm workers on a number of topics. We have 7 currently in our library of topics. We're currently offering 6. We do the worker protection standard, heat stress prevention training, chemical hazard communication, which is our newest. We also have limiting exposures around families, which is a take-home pesticide exposure training. We have pesticide exposure and pregnancy, geared more towards women, but it also is very relevant for men. And then we have Jose Learns About Pesticides, which is a training for our farm worker youth, ages 4 to 10. And then finally, we have tractor safety, which is the one that we aren't currently offering. But we have 7 training topics that we provide. And, all of them are geared towards occupational health and safety for farm workers. So addressing the hazards that they encounter while they're doing their work. And we have right now 260 trainers in our network. Thank you all. I haven't met all of you, but that is my goal, is to be able to meet you or talk to you at least once during the year. And we are operating in 29 states this year.
Awesome. We had a few more people join us and letting us know how hot it is where they are. Ava from Wenatchee, Washington says it's 79. Annette in North Carolina says it's humid and hot and 89 degrees. And we already have a question from Lupe. So thank you, Lupe, for that question. I'm going to save it for a little bit later. Dee from Hawaii says it's 90. Oh, it's just as hot in Hawaii. I might as well be there. Okay, so Vashti, one more question before I ask Juley about their campaign at Public Citizen. Vashti, can you tell us about the Heat Stress Prevention Training Marathon? What is it? How did it start? And how many organizations?
So the Heat Stress Prevention Training Marathon is actually an awareness campaign that we do every year. It lasts a week, and we have our trainers go out and train as many farm workers as possible with a focus on heat stress prevention training during that week. And this year we have 19 organizations or states participating. Hopefully they're able to get out and train. I know they're encountering some issues with COVID-19 right now. But the point of this is we normally do it in mid-July because it is so warm, and we start to see a lot of heat waves and deaths, unfortunately. So we picked this time, and it started in 2012 in conjunction with OSHA's annual heat stress campaign that they have for outdoor workers. And so we've adopted their water, rest, shade slogan, and we make sure that our trainers know to just make sure that workers know what to look for in signs and symptoms, and what to do to prevent a heat-related illness, and if something should happen, what the next steps are to take care of that.
Great. We just lost Juley. Let me see if we can get her back on. Can everyone see Juley? Juley, can you hear us? I don't think so. Juley, can you see us? So we're having some technical difficulties. This is not unusual. Let me just get her on the phone. Let's see. Bear with us. One moment.
Hello, and welcome to the meeting. Please enter your passcode followed by the pound or hash key, and I'll connect. Please hold while I confirm your passcode. 228.
Sorry, I just entered the participant code. I do that every time. All right, let's try it again. Okay, thanks, Lupe, for the feedback. You can't see Juley either.
Please enter your passcode followed by the pound or hash key.
Do you remember the? Do you remember the? I shouldn't ask that right on here. Okay. Maybe text it to me.
Yes, I can. Let me give it to you right now. If it will let me type in the.
Yay, you're back.
Yay!
Sorry, I'm in the middle of trying to get on the conference call. Can you hear us?
Yes, I can.
I can
hear
see a blurred screen. Yay!
Oh,
We can at least hear you. That's an improvement over not being able to hear or see you. I see a black line, but as long as I can hear you, that's the main thing. Can you hear me again? Uh-oh.
It looks like it says completely out.
Yeah. Thanks,
What's that?
Vashti. Oh, there we go. Can you hear me?
I can see fingers.
you can see fingers.
Yay.
You can see my
I can
feet.
see. Yes.
Why can't I turn the camera around?
Great.
Ah, it switched on you.
Yes, it did. Do you know how to turn the camera around?
Do you have a little gear?
A little camera icon.
Like a little gear icon next to an X, maybe. It might give you setting options in there.
Thank you, everyone, for bearing with us. We're trying to get Juley back on. She's our resident expert on heat stress prevention.
Okay, I don't know if I can fix my camera. It doesn't. I'm on my iPad now because
Sure.
the computer wasn't
Well, we
working.
can hear you. That's the most important thing. And if we couldn't get you on camera, I would get you on the phone anyways. All right, so let's just keep going. Juley, are you okay to answer the questions like this? There you are! Yay! Woohoo! It's even clearer than before. That's fabulous. Let me make sure it showed up. I'm checking the Facebook. Ah, yes, I think it is showing up. Let me know in the chat if you all can see Juley and hear Juley. So we'll proceed. Thank you, Juley, for joining on your iPad. It seems to be working better. All right, so the question I had for Juley was about Public Citizens Heat Stress Prevention Campaign. Can you tell us when did it start? How many organizations are involved? Uh-oh, I can't hear her. Vashti, can you hear her?
Nope.
Oh, crap. Sorry, shouldn't say crap. Eva says she can see Juley. Can you let me know if you can hear Juley? Juley, why don't you call into the conference line anyways? Oh, there she goes. It's fun. It's an adventure, right?
Hey, this is what we're all going through right now.
Okay, Ava says she can't. Tessa is asking, she's muted. We're gonna do her invite Julie over the conference call. So let's see. Okay, so we're waiting for Julie. Vashti, while we wait for Julie, can we move on to another question I had for you about heat stress and farm workers?
Sure.
Great. So why is it important to educate farm workers on the dangers of heat stress?
So the obvious reason, the majority of farm workers work outside, and I'm not sure where the statistic comes from, but I believe outdoor workers have they're at a 20 times greater risk of experiencing heat-related illness than the normal workforce, the general workforce. So with farm workers, they're working in direct sunlight, they're working in the fields, they're working in enclosed spaces, and those spaces are usually very warm. And they're doing heavy lifting, lots of strenuous work. And it's important to make sure that they know how to protect themselves. Be it clothing or what signs and symptoms to look for so that they don't fall victim to an HRI or a heat-related illness.
Great, thank you, Vashti. And another part of that question was, what's the main message of the training?
So there's a couple. With farm workers, we're always talking about you want to make sure that you're paying attention to how your body's reacting to pesticide residues, how your body's reacting to being in the heat. But now we also have COVID-19, and so it's now kind of a triple threat. And you shared the story about the young man, Jorge, at the beginning. These are preventable deaths, is what we're trying to prevent when it comes to heat-related illness. You shouldn't die from a heat-related illness. And if you know what signs and symptoms to look for, you can protect yourself, you can protect your coworkers. And a lot of times those signs and symptoms resemble other illnesses. And so they go unnoticed or people just ignore them. Right now with COVID-19, they say nausea, chills, fever. These are all signs of a heat-related illness as well. So making sure, one, that you know what signs and symptoms to look for, you know what to do if you start to experience any of those signs and symptoms. You want to move to a shaded area. You want to stay in an air-conditioned area. You don't want to be alone. And a lot of times that's how people end up dying, is they either get left alone or they wander off because they're experiencing confusion. And by the time they are found, it's too late. Your body temperature starts to rise, and it at a certain point, you need medical intervention. So the key there is, if you're unsure, get help. Call 911, get a doctor. It's better to be safe than sorry. But the 3 takeaways are water, rest, shade. You want to make sure that you're drinking water before you're even thirsty. So you want to stay hydrated. You want to drink at least 1 cup of water every 15 to 20 minutes. You want to take regular breaks, anywhere from 15 minutes to 45 minutes, depending on the type of work that you're doing, whether or not you're used to working in that kind of climate. And then you want to make sure that those breaks are in a safe, shaded area. And when I say safe, pesticide free, now free of other individuals, that you can sit at least 6 feet apart and remove some of your personal protective equipment or your long sleeve shirts or your face coverings so that your body has a chance to properly cool down.
Excellent. Thank you, Vashti. Welcome back. Julie, can you hear us? Great. Vashti, can you hear Julie?
Barely. It's a whisper.
So I think it's coming through on the phone. So as long as there's no, Julie, you'll have to mute your computer. Can you mute your computer?
Yeah.
Okay. So you'll have to type the sound through your phone. Thank you for calling in. And we're, making this work. So perfect. I can hear you. I can see you. If someone else wants to, someone says I don't. Okay. Well, I have the phone turned up. So can someone else chime in? Let me know if you can hear or see Juley. Victor says he can't.
Hi, can people hear me?
I can hear you. Josh, I can hear you. Victor says he can't, but is there anyone else on that could give us some feedback if they can hear? I assume if I can hear you, hopefully everyone else can, because you're coming through my speaker now. So I'll just go ahead with another question.
Okay.
Can hear and see. Yay. Thank you, Rachel. Okay. We are making this work. Good job, everybody. Okay. So Juley, let's talk about Public Citizens Heat Stress Prevention Campaign. When did it start? How many organizations are involved? What's the main goal? And how will it benefit farm workers? That's a lot. So I'll take as much time as you need to answer that.
That's okay. Well, the campaign started in 2018, so it's just a couple of years old. We have about 130 organizations that are involved. Those are, national, state, local level organizations. They're folks who work on labor issues, environmental issues, health issues. It's a pretty broad group of partners. And our goals are pretty much twofold. The first is to protect workers from heat stress related illness and injury. And the second is to use what research is out there to bolster the notion that we need to effectively stop climate change. As climate change is increasing the heat, it's increasing the number of extreme heat days that we're seeing, and it's making life that much more dangerous for those who are working, especially outdoors and under the hot sun. There's just more and more danger there as climate change occurs. So we're trying to address both of those issues.
And we really appreciate Public Citizens leadership on this issue. We're a part of the Heat Stress Network, and we're really pleased by the leadership you're providing on this issue. Since I skipped a couple questions ahead for Vashti, I have another question for you, Juley. What can employers do about heat stress?
Well, the main things that you need to think about with respect to heat stress are getting adequate hydration, water, rest, and shade. Now, those are things that employers are largely going to be in control of. And so we need to make sure that employers understand the nature of the problem. There are guidelines that exist federally. Those guidelines are not enforceable regulations, but they are guidelines that give information to employers about calculating the heat index and heat stress limits. So the idea is to take in the temperature, the humidity, all those kinds of things, and combine it with the amount of physical exertion that the person is doing through their work, and come up with this sort of limit that if you reach that limit, we've really got to find ways to cool you down through water, through dust, through shade. Employers need to know those limits, and they need to make sure that all of those things are available. They can make sure that adequate water is available. They can make sure that there are adequate rest breaks and that those happen in a cool, shaded location to keep people safe. They can also do other things like post hazard warnings about heat hazard days, and they can educate employers and supervisors and employees on how to effectively see when their body is reaching that limit and needs to get cooled down immediately. And they can have people who are fully trained in dealing with any kind of emergency situation that might arise, because heat stress is dangerous and can result not only in very serious injury, but in death, as you mentioned in the beginning with the horrible case in Indiana. So employers need to be ready to deal with that if it does happen, because this is hazardous work, and unfortunately, it's going to present a problem eventually, and sometimes more often than we would hope.
And the thing that I'm not an expert on this, Vashti knows more about it than me, but I had a friend who experienced heat stroke, or not heat stroke, but heat exhaustion. Sorry, I'm not clear on my definitions. And she said that she has a lower tolerance for heat now ever since, that it has affected her lifelong, and it happened to her when she was young. So this has been a lifelong struggle now, that she cannot tolerate the heat. So as I understand it, it becomes a chronic thing. Once you have it once, you're more susceptible to it again.
That's true, and there are a lot of things that physically make us different and make our responses to heat different. So there's not a one-size-fits-all. Anybody, for instance, who has any kind of chronic condition, whether it be a heart problem or diabetes, those are things that make you really susceptible to heat illness. And so you need to kind of know your body and respect that your body may respond differently. And while other people may be able to, do just fine in the current heat, you're feeling really overwhelmed and overheated and fatigued and dizzy and all those things, then you need to take the break and get the cool and the cool shade and the water and all of that because your body's reacting differently.
Exactly. And that's a good segue to talk about COVID-19. How is that interplaying now with heat? And what should we be aware of when we're giving this training to farm workers and talking about heat stress?
Well, as everybody knows, we're learning new things about COVID-19 every day. The research isn't keeping up with what's happening to us each as we go through our days. But what we do know is this. If you have COVID-19, it makes you more susceptible to heat stress illness. If you have heat stress, it makes you more susceptible to getting COVID-19. So those two things are interacting in ways that are making it much more dangerous for people who work in high heat conditions. And we have all these added problems. If you're wearing a mask, how do you, drink your water, and when is it safe to take off your mask to do that? And when you go to take a break in a shaded area, is it crowded with other people? And, that danger that it creates. And then also just understanding that masks themselves prevent our bodies from cooling down as much as we would like. It's critical that you wear the mask. It has to, be there to protect you from COVID-19. But it's also just as critical to make sure you take mask breaks. That is time away from other people where you're safe. You can take off your mask and rest and let some cool air get into your lungs and help cool you down.
I want to take this opportunity to share that resource that you all provided this week. Let me just pull that right up. While I do that, Vashti, we had a question come in for kids. How can we, let me make sure I characterize the question correctly. How can we see visual symptoms on children, and how do we look to detect any heat exhaustion? Can you answer that question?
Yes, it's a loaded question. And it depends on the age of a child too. If you have a younger child, it's a little bit more difficult because they aren't as verbal. So you really have to kind of look, but you also need to understand heat affects younger and older individuals at a greater rate than it does, say, those of us in the middle of our lives. And as Juley said, if you have pre-existing conditions, all of these things play a part. So it goes back to knowing how your child normally behaves and being able to see any of those differences in them. A lot of times, just being able to feel their skin. Is it really warm? Are they sweating more than they usually do? Are they consuming more liquids or none at all? These are all things that you need to take into account. If you have small children, we already know that babies, it's really hard for them to cool themselves down because their systems are still developing, right? So we need to do that as parents or the adult in that situation, is to make sure that they're covered, that they're in a cool place. They have lots of little cute rules that make them, just adorable rules of that, but also heat and sweat get trapped in there. So they have heat bumps, things of that nature. So making sure that there is a constant source of air for those children, that they are taking breaks. I know it's really hard. I have a toddler and he doesn't want to stop for anything. And so just making him take that time out in a shaded area or in an air-conditioned area is key. Because what you want to do is stop it before you have to recognize a symptom. It's a little bit easier to prevent than it is to cure. So the idea is to not have to do that. But it's many of the same signs and symptoms, but with children, it takes a little bit more detective work because, again, play is more important than anything else. So you have to be the one to be able to recognize that.
Thanks, Vashti. We had another question coming from Tessa. Thank you, Tessa. I will pose this one to Juley, and while I do that, I'm going to also put up Public Citizens' Twitter and Facebook handles and website. I put in the particular article that I was referring to that Public Citizen just put out for heat stress and COVID-19. But Tessa's question was that while California and Washington have outdoor heat exposure standards, their laws do not include provisions about compensation for workers during breaks or recovery from heat illnesses. How can we create policies at a state or federal level that adequately compensate farm workers if they take breaks due to heat, since farm workers are normally paid based on how much food they pick? Juley, do you want to tackle that one?
Yeah, this is a really important question, and it has raised a lot of concerns out there. Having that kind of basis is making things much more difficult on a heat stress level because people are not taking breaks, they're not taking the time away to cool down. And what needs to happen are regulations specifically about employee pay. Excuse me, and those are separate from the heat stress, but tied to it. And that is the idea that people should be getting paid sick leave, so they can actually take days off when they need to cool down. And that also they be getting paid breaks, that the breaks that are required to keep you protected also be paid time. Now, there are arguments about whether they should switch away from a, paid by how much you pick system. It certainly is more protective of workers if you go to an hourly rate. And so it is something that policymakers should really be looking at very, very carefully. And if they pay their workers adequately at an hourly rate, it's going to protect the workers both financially and in terms of heat stress and other illnesses that they may get. And again, as I mentioned, paid sick leave. If you're sick, if you have symptoms of COVID-19, you shouldn't be coming to work, but employers need to pay you for that time off, or people are going to show up sick, and it's going to get everybody else sick as well.
Exactly. I was about to say that this applies across the board to all illnesses like COVID-19. If people have sick leave, it's going to protect everybody else because they won't be coming to work sick. And that is crucial. And that's something that farm workers don't have. And it's been a thorn in farm workers' side. Here, I realized I didn't have your name up there. It's been a thorn in their side, and they deserve better. They deserve better. I want to also touch on climate change, since you mentioned at the beginning that Public Citizens, one of your big campaigns is also on climate change. How is that affecting heat stress and the dangers for outdoor workers?
Sure. Well, people may be aware that we're currently under what they're calling a heat dome, which is covering most of the United States and is going to be for the rest of July. It's unusually high heat. We're seeing more and more of these. 19 of the past 20 years have been the hottest on record. So, we're seeing the impact. We're seeing the increase in temperature in all areas of the country. Of course, the South is feeling it the worst because it was already high temperatures. And if we continue the way that we're going, by the middle of this century, by 2050, we'd be looking at today's sort of current high temperatures as the norm during summertime. So you think about the hottest days that are happening, they would be the normal days. And heat stress becomes a huge hazard on these extreme heat days. The more of them we have, the more injuries, the more deaths we're going to have. So obviously, addressing climate change is going to be key to making sure we keep workers safe. We will always have to deal with heat stress, but by protecting our climate, reversing the course of things, it will be less of a problem than it's going to be otherwise.
Thank you, Juley. So what can our listeners do about all of this? I'm going to ask both of you. Vashti first, how can listeners help when it comes to AFOP Health and Safety's effort to educate farm workers on the dangers of heat stress?
Empathy goes a long way. Understanding that what we're experiencing just when we're out enjoying our day is something that farm workers are experiencing on a daily and at a greater degree. It's usually 10 degrees warmer in the fields than it is outside of the fields. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Two is supporting our partners and organizations that are doing these trainings, that are out there educating farm workers. There are many ways to get involved in your own community. And then thirdly, like Public Citizen, for instance, they're, spearheading some of these movements to get a federal standard for heat stress. And I know Juley's going to talk about that, but these are important things that we need to keep in mind, because we're all a part of this world, and we all, as we've seen, we all need each other in one way or another. And so everything that's affecting farm workers will affect us, the general public, in one way or another. And then finally, with COVID-19, you can still donate masks. It's important that they have enough masks while they're working in the fields to be able to switch them out, because if you're sweating and you're exerting all that energy, you're going to need something that's going to actually protect you, as opposed to just wearing something that's clinging to your face because it's covered in sweat. After a while, it stops working. So to be able to switch those out so that they're actually working. There are a number of organizations that are on social media that are accepting donations. There are big companies that are accepting money so that they can donate. And some of our member organizations are also looking for donations. So there's ways for everybody to get involved, small, big, however you want, but we can all do our part.
And Juley, how about Public Citizen? How can the public help Public Citizen in their campaigns?
Well, I think I have to agree first is that everybody just needs to educate themselves. Educate themselves not only on all of the heat stress issues that affect people working and in other areas of our lives, but understanding what kinds of policies are in place that are either protective or not protective, and are making things better or worse. As I mentioned before, there are some guidelines that come out of the federal government about how to address heat stress in the workplace, but they're not enforceable regulations. Now, OSHA, the Occupational Health and Safety Administration, they have a general regulation that says employers are required to keep a workplace safe. And so this fits under that, but there's no specifics there that are going to tell employers what they should be doing. And there's no specifics there that allow someone who is working in an unsafe circumstance to go to the government and say, my employer is violating these issues. So we're trying to get a federal standard passed. We're trying to do it by talking directly to OSHA and get them to do it. We're also talking to Congress to try to get them to force OSHA to do it. And we're also just trying to address that general problem of climate change. Things like the Green New Deal, where we have to take some really dramatic steps to try to change. We know that there aren't simple solutions to climate change. It's going to take a really dramatic change on everybody's part to make things go in a different direction than they're currently going. So we have at Public Citizen on our website all sorts of great resources and information about these things. We encourage you to sign our petitions. We have systems set up online where all you have to do is type in your name and your location, and it'll automatically send a letter to your member of Congress, or will automatically send a letter to OSHA saying, please put these regulations in place. And so we try to make it as easy as possible, and we hope that you will join us in making your voice heard, because the more people who speak up about this, the more likely we're going to see some activity in Washington that helps protect people.
Thank you, Julie. I put some links in the chat that Julie was just talking about. The first one, can you tell us what that is? It's the email blast heat protection. Is that to take action on the heat standard?
Yes. The first one that you've listed there is will automatically send a letter to your member of Congress, your representative in Congress, to support a bill that's called the Asunción Valdivia Heat Illness and Fatality Prevention Act. And it would direct the federal government to put in some strong and enforceable heat stress regulations. The second one that you put up would send a letter directly to OSHA saying, please put these regulations in place. The third one is going to send a letter to your member of Congress saying, support the Green New Deal and the changes that are in there. So we encourage you to do those things. And like I said, you go on our website, there's all sorts of action you can take on a variety of issues. But there's a lot of information up there about both heat stress and climate change.
Great. Thank you, Julie. We appreciate all the comments that have come in, all the questions that you all have asked. This is an opportunity for you to ask more if you have them. I am out of questions. But Vashti and Juley, do you have any further thoughts on anything that we've said here today?
One thing I was going to mention, this issue of taking a break and cooling down, obviously that's important, but it's also important to understand that if you've been in the heat all day, then your body really needs time to adjust, a long period of time, not just that short little rest break. So being able to cool down in the evening is really important. Unfortunately, a lot of folks don't have access to air conditioning. And this problem of climate change is also increasing how hot the nights are, not just the days. I think at the end of June here, there was a week in southern Florida where it never got below 80 degrees at night. And so we're having this problem that your body doesn't get that long-term adjustment happening either. And that's why it's even more important for us to address the climate change. And it's also important for you to think about getting adequate rest and hydration when you're not at work in the evenings, as a way to make your body adjust more completely than it does with a 15 or 30 minute break during the day.
An excellent point. Thank you for bringing that up.
Off of that, Julie brings up a really great point. For farm workers, that's even more difficult, especially if they're living in group housing or rental properties. They may not be able to afford air conditioned units or the cost of the increase in your electric bill, or there may be multiple people in that space, multiple families. And so there is no opportunity to be able to cool down. You've got way too many people in a small space and you're going to work every day. And, this is just a pattern that you're going to be doing. So a lot of times we don't think about that aspect of it either. And, it's just, it's hard on top of hard on top of hard for our farm workers out there, and keeping that in mind. And as Julie said, a lot of these things are geared towards the employer, making sure that the employer understands the hazards of heat stress and heat related illnesses and what they can do to prevent it. That's key.
Absolutely.
And I will also say that with respect to fans in the evening, fans are a great way to help cool you down. But remember that if you're downwind from somebody who's got COVID-19, you're more likely to get the illness. So it's really important, if you're going to be standing in front of a fan, that you don't have people right behind you when you do it. And just try to make sure that you're cognizant of that when you're using fans to cool down.
Oh man, all these things we have to think about. Thank you, Julie. Yeah, thank you to both of you. You've brought up a lot of things that I think I think about heat stress a lot, but I've also learned some things here today. So thank you to both of you for joining us. I want to call everyone's attention again to our contest. I put the link in the chat box. I'm also going to put it up here with a little emoji that hopefully grabs your attention. We've extended the deadline to July 31st, and if you have it postmarked by July 31st, it still counts. So please send in your entry today. Vashti and Julie, thank you again. We have not gotten any more questions, so I think this is a wrap. Julie, thanks for rolling with the punches and joining on the phone and on a new device other than the one that you joined initially with. So we're really happy to be partners with you in a lot of our initiatives. So thank you again so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. See you all again next week right here, Children in the Fields campaign at 12:30 Eastern. Bye.
Bye. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.